The African Union recognizes the right to health as an integral part of human rights, as enshrined in Article 25 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights and guaranteed by Article 16 of the African Charter. Access to affordable, safe, quality and efficacious medicines is vital in delivering on this right, as well as protection from harmful medicines, proliferation of substandard, spurious, falsified, falsely labeled counterfeit medical products. In most countries, national regulatory authorities have the mandate to regulate medical products and research within their territory. National regulatory authorities also regulate clinical trials, manufacturing, and the marketing of medical products. However, the comprehensiveness of regulatory legislation and therefore the strength of national regulatory authorities vary from country to country. As a result, access to health technologies remains a major challenge in many African countries. Weak or non-existent medical products regulatory systems have aggravated this situation. The African Union Model Law on Medical Products Regulation is a legislative framework that addresses these challenges and assists African countries in addressing gaps and inconsistencies in regulatory legislation, and enables harmonization that can accelerate access to innovative, life-saving health technologies. The Model Law was officially endorsed by the African heads of state and government at the AU Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in January 2016. Following the endorsement, regional roadmaps for implementation of the African Union Model Law have been developed, and African countries can enact a version of the Model Law that best fits their country's context and strengthens their national regulatory capacity. The African Union Model Law is premised on establishment of autonomous regulatory bodies with the following key regulatory functions: registration and marketing authorization of medical products, granting manufacturing, importing, exporting, supplying, storing, and distribution licenses, conducting quality and safety monitoring of health technologies, as well as inspection of manufacturing facilities, authorizing clinical trials through an established National Ethics Committee or Institutional Review Board, scheduling, classification, and control of medical products, prohibiting substandard, spurious, falsified, falsely labeled counterfeit medical products, and overseeing appeals procedures through an established Administrative Appeals Committee. African Union member states have a responsibility to regulate medical products and provide adequate mechanisms for guaranteeing their safety, efficacy, and quality. Promote and protect the health of citizens by developing and implementing regulatory systems that satisfy best practices on medical products legislation, in alignment with World Health Organization recommendations and international safety and quality standards. Unfortunately, the capacity of many African countries to evaluate and approve health technologies and to monitor their safety, efficacy, and quality is limited due to inadequate resources, overburdened staff, and incoherent policy frameworks. Additionally, regulatory legislation differs from country to country, resulting in delays for researchers and manufacturers who must navigate multiple regulatory systems to register the same medical product across countries. Due to weak implementation of national regulatory legislation and gaps in resource allocation, many national regulatory authorities are inadequately funded, understaffed, and overburdened. As a result, national regulatory authorities typically do not have the expertise and the experience to provide guidance to product developers who are seeking clinical trial or product registration, nor do they have proper control over numerous products that are studied, introduced, and used in their countries. The insufficient capacity of national regulatory authorities in some African countries can lead to costly delays in product development and introduction, ultimately impacting on their capacity to enable access to critical life-saving drugs where and when they are needed most. Recognizing the importance of efficient and aligned regulatory systems in ensuring access to health technologies, the NEPAD Agency, through the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Program, together with cooperating partners, led the development of the African Union Model Law on Medical Products Regulation. This comprehensive model legislation can now be implemented by national governments and regional economic communities to harmonize regulatory systems and increase collaboration across countries. Ultimately, the model law is meant to accelerate access to life-saving interventions and ensure that promising health technologies are developed, tested, and scaled up to improve health impact. The AU model law is a critical instrument in the regulatory harmonization effort and will lend invaluable support to overcoming the regulatory challenges that have long plagued the continent. Advocates have a critical role to play in ensuring that their countries commence with the internalization process, ultimately implement a version of the AU model law that addresses gaps and inconsistencies in their regulatory legislation and enabling harmonization efforts. This process shall contribute to ensuring that access to innovative, life-saving medical products and technologies is accelerated and thus create a platform for a healthier Africa that responds better to the threat of disease and epidemics.